Of Matthew, chapter 22, verses 15 to 22. Then the proud religious law keepers got together to think how they could trap Jesus with his own talk. They sent their followers to Jesus with some of King Herod's men, and they asked him, "Teacher, we know that you are true. We know that you are teaching the truth about God. We know that you are not afraid of what other people think of you. So tell us what you think of this. Is it right to pay Caesar taxes or not?" Well, Jesus knew what their intentions were, and he said, "You pretend to be someone you're not. Why do you want to trap me? Show me a piece of money." So they brought him a piece. And Jesus said to them, "Whose picture is on this? Whose name is on this?" And they said to him, "Caesar's." And he said to them, "Give to Caesar the things that belong to Caesar, and give to God the things that belong to God." Now, when they heard this, they were surprised and had to think about that. And so they went away from him. May the Lord add a blessing to this reading and our understanding. Well, it's that time of year again, when human beings begin their search out in the wilds of the harvest, in the fields of far-away farms, down the rustic roads of cows, looking at country stands with barrels of apples. We can see it in our mind's eye, the perfect specimen, the shade of its skin, the shape of its face, the weight of it in our arms. The hunt for the perfect pumpkin has begun. Now, it's one of my favorite memories, and I would bet it is many of yours, whether it's from a time as your childhood or a time as a parent or a time with your grandchildren or with great-grandchildren. But hollowing out that mighty orange squash with all its gooey innards, getting your elbows deep inside it, scattering the seeds in that stringy mess all over the kitchen table, covered in newspaper. And then carving a face into it. And even better, putting a candle inside so that that face will light up at night. Now, it may be silly or scary. It might be a toothless grin, or it might be one in need of a good dentist. And we are delighted with our creation. The creation that we have made in our image, from our imagination, with our very own hands. And maybe we'll even enter it into a contest so that others can be thrilled by its sight, the sight of all these fantastic images, these bearing squashes. And then we'll create spine-tingling displays, and everyone will come and ooh and ah over the sheer imagination and talent of these pumpkins. That we have taken a vegetable and we have turned it into something to admire and to think we're not even going to eat it. Human beings love putting our image and leaving our mark on all kinds of things, from graffiti art to the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, from cave dwellings thousands of years ago to computer avatars today. In art, in poetry, in our craftsmanship, human beings have always felt drawn to imbue the things they create with their own image. It's one of the features that we share with God, that creative impulse. It's a way that we can take control of our surroundings and make order out of chaos. It's a way that we can make meaning of our lives. It's a way that we can leave our mark, leave our legacy. And it's a way that we can claim things as our own. Not simply a goofy pumpkin with a lopsided smile, but things with far greater importance. Like, for instance, the story of our church's early beginnings and their first founders, many sitting right here. Or our church's search committee, determining right now what qualities, what beliefs, what values will make Mount Rise what it is. What image will the search committee create to present to a settled pastor? Especially in a world where image is everything. Well, this is likely how coins and other forms of money have come to be formed with images and trademarks of emperors, of queens, and of other people in power. It was a way to consolidate power and to constantly remind people who controlled their lives, so that every time goods and services exchanged hands, it was like Caesar saying, "Oh, that's mine, thank you very much. And oh yes, those taxes, yes, those are mine." And Caesar was there all the time proclaiming, "Yes, that's mine too. Yes, that belongs to me too, thank you very much." Now, of course, as you can imagine, people of religion loathed it because it was the stuff of idolatry. And it was particularly offensive because not only did it bear the image of the one who was holding all the power, but it also held an inscription on the coin that read, "Tiberius Caesar, Augustus, son of divine Augustus." You see, emperors at that time claimed that they were imbued with the divine blessing of God, that they were the ones anointed to do God's work. And throughout time, they have coerced and aligned themselves with religious authorities to extend their power in the very name of God, saying it was ordained by God, saying that God said the powerful should rule the earth. Simply put, money was a constant reminder to Roman occupation, and specifically why the Jewish community abhorred it. They were being asked to worship a false god. And so this question posed to Jesus and now to us about the emperor's coin is really tricky. It's also a very deep spiritual one, and one I suggest that we are facing in our very own days, when politicians have entangled loyalties with religion. And what we believe about God decides not just who will lead this country, but what kind of God will we serve through that leader. And so when they asked Jesus, is it right to serve the emperor and to do his bidding, he manages to wiggle out of that trap by reminding them of something that everyone finds so easy to forget, or worse, easy to deny. What's more extraordinary than the face of Caesar on a coin? Well, the fact is that each of us was carved by the Creator, that each of us has a mark on his or own life by the divine. What's more extraordinary than tall buildings bearing symbols of power, and an army that Caesar can beckon to and can threaten crowds into subordination with? The extraordinary creation of a human being, bearing the image of God. That's what. You see, the currency of Caesar is copper and stone and sword, and these are very powerful things for building an empire. But the currency of God is Jesus Christ. And these are things of flesh and blood. These are things of intellect and language, creativity, morality, kindness. And imagine, just for a moment, what those kinds of things could build. What is a human? Let me tell you, no small thing. A human is God's own image. But I don't think we know what that means anymore. And we have let the emperors over time lay claim to us, chipping away at our humanity. We've given up our divine inheritance, and we've given ourselves over to the world's DNA, gradually forgetting who we really are. Bearing God's image does not just mean that we are precious or that we're worthy. And it doesn't just mean that God loves us. It means that we, ourselves, inside of us, have the capacity to represent God in our very thoughts, in our very actions, in our interactions. It means that as much as the world will always try and convince us otherwise, we have been designed to reflect those holy qualities. And anyone or anything that calls you to make an image of yourself or of someone else that is not of the qualities of God is not God. Abraham followed God when all around him people worshiped idols. And he became the father of our faith. Moses went up against Pharaoh and built an enormous empire on the backs of refugees. And God in Moses freed them from that false image of slavery. And he built them back into the image of children of God. David saved his people from a giant bully who bellowed and taunted them night and day, calling them names and shaming them and making them afraid of his great power. And then David stepped up. Why? Because he refused to let the people's fear make them forget that God was greater and mightier than all the world's hate-slinging giants. And Jesus, born to a people who were oppressed and under siege, whose loyalty to the crown was demanded under the watchful eyes of leagues of soldiers, frightening them to comply. To a people who had to carry a coin they deplored, a coin that tried to steal their souls and make them forget who and whose they were. To a people who were denied entrance into the temple if they were poor, crippled, sick, the wrong race, the wrong gender, or simply uncompliant to the rules of belonging to Caesar's empire. And that is what made Jesus so mad that day in the temple when he overturned the tables. You see, the empire was stamping its image over the image of God and claiming God's creation as its very own, that Caesar was laying claim to being divine, sent by the divine, of divine will, and was distorting God. Jesus said, "You have made God's house into a den of thieves. Thieves of the soul, thieves of goodness, thieves of compassion, thieves of justice and righteousness. You have made this into a den of thieves of love. Yes, love. Where is the love? Here. It was placed in the center of our hearts in the very beginning, and it remains there still, like a small tea light in the bottom of a hollowed-out pumpkin. And even when our God-like image is so tarnished and broken and so demolished by the sins of the world that we may not even be sure that we're able to love this world anymore, we remember the most extraordinary gift of all, that God became one of us. And because of that, we know that even in the worst of times, even in suffering, even in death, we still bear the image of the divine. We are bearers of God's great love. Imagine if that love was unleashed in each of our lives, knowing our own value, seeing value in every human being. Imagine what the world would look like if we took back what belongs to God, our humanity, our nobility, our honor, our intellect, our compassion, our kindness, our thirst for mercy and justice. Imagine what a nation could look like if we remembered that we are God bearers, made in God's image, carved with Christ's mark. I believe that that is what Jesus envisions when he holds that coin and he flips it back into the hands of the Pharisees. Jesus isn't impressed with power and the greed of empires. He's much more interested in restoring us to our original image, a beautiful, carved, engraved masterpiece with the light of love glowing within us, smiling in praise to the one who created us. And Jesus envisions that God, the Creator, is gazing right back at us as we're all lined up on the porch, shining our lights into a dark night. And God is looking at us and saying, these beauties are mine. Thanks be to God. Amen.